Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Let me just turn the background down just a bit so we just have a little bit of a feeling there of mood. Today I've decided is a good time to talk about a topic that is pertinent to where I'm at in life right now. You may or may not know, I live in Indonesia now. I've been here for about going on 5 months, and looks like I'm going to make it my home because I've met a very nice lady here, and we've decided to be married, and I really like it here. And as you might imagine, Indonesia being a Muslim majority country, it's a little different than most places, and I've had a good chance to get familiar with the Muslim faith. In fact, I've been married in the Muslim faith and have had to come to grips with being a Muslim Omnist. So I thought, now that I've had a taste of this culture, a taste of this religion, I would be a good time to talk about what being an Omnist Muslim would be all about. As I've talked about in other segments, an Omnist can believe any religion to the extent that it is consistent with what is scientifically provable, what is the experience of those who have had real encounters with the spiritual world. So I'm a very firm believer in the truth of spiritual science. And that does not negate the truth of any religion. But it does require that you be able to modify your religious beliefs, temper them if new truths are revealed. The Omnist believes in prophets, believes that there are spiritual messages sent to people to guide humanity, and presumably other species around the universe, to fulfill their purpose. And a greater purpose in basically creation, making this wonderful multiverse we all live in a better place, a bigger, better, more wonderful place, which is the ultimate point of everything, the ultimate point of creation. There's no need for anything to exist unless we're trying to expand the existence of good things that are thought of. The spiritual world, as I've told you, is a world of pure thought, of ideas. The physical world is how those ideas are tested and implemented. The spiritual idea can be an individual idea, the individual idea of, I am a soul, I am incarnating in different forms, one of them being a human body, and executing the idea of my identity, who I am, who I want to be, who I want to be seen to be by others, in the limitations of a human body. It's basically what the experience of being a human for a lifetime is all about. And religions are in themselves ideas. They exist because somebody had an inspiration to spread a certain way of thinking, a certain way of life, and it happened to catch on or not catch on, and either became an active religion and started having a life of its own, or fell into disuse and disinterest. And, as I probably say fairly often, a good and fun way to learn about how religions work is to watch Mighty Python's Life of Brian, which is basically all about religion. It has a funny, dark look at it and pokes a lot of fun at existing religions, but there's very, very much truth behind it. And behind how it posits that a religion can form around almost any idea if it gains enough currency. Okay, so let's go back to the topic at hand. How does one be an Omnist Muslim? So let's first take a step back and look at the tenets of the Islamic faith, okay? So there's 5 basic things that are common to all Muslims. There's the declaration of faith. They believe there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger, a prophet. They believe in ritual prayer, very strict ritual prayer, 5 times a day. And this is an activity that's done separately by men and women, which is an interesting take on prayer. And I think the women have slightly different rituals than the men. I'm not absolutely certain on that, but it seems to be. They believe in giving charity, and this is a good practice. I like this feature of it. This is common to all of the Abrahamic faiths, but I think more so than Christianity or Judaism, the Muslims make a very big deal of charity, and this lends a very different feeling to their culture, which has been more able to resist the pull of basically expecting the government to do everything for everybody. There's much more of a remaining sense of responsibility to community, responsibility to others in the Muslim community than I see remaining in other communities around the world. So this is a very, very wonderful positive of Islamic culture. They believe in fasting during the month of Ramadan. Nothing wrong with fasting. Many, many traditions have that. And it's not from dawn till dusk fasting. So after dark you can do some things. It's also abstinence from food, water, sex, cigarettes, bad thinking, bad talking. So it's just trying to be a month where you think about being the best person you can, which is a good idea. I think that's something that you shouldn't reserve for a special month, but if you have a ritual that gives that special month for people to think about it, maybe some new habits will be formed and will carry on past that month. So I think that's a good idea. Something I think, again, that maybe whatever elements of those devotions were remaining in other faiths have kind of fallen by the wayside. And then the last one is pilgrimage to Mecca, which I don't have strong feelings about. I think I haven't been to Mecca. I don't know what kind of spiritual energy there is there, what is going to come of that. In general, some of the other beliefs, okay, so one God, Allah. So like other monotheistic religions, they believe that there is one supreme God. There's truth in that. And I think, where all the one God religions fall short is the idea that this original God, the first creator, I like to call him, the parent of all other souls, is all-powerful or all-knowing, all this, all that. This just isn't so. I'm sorry, you can't mesh that with available evidence and not come up with either God is a bad guy or doesn't care or has some anti-God alter ego, call it Satan, whatever, that is responsible for all the bad things because God must be good. This just is silly. The truth is that there is a first creator, And the first set of rules of creation were the brainchild of this first creator. Now, the rules since then have been basically the work of the creative efforts of every soul. So the moment that God created a second soul, call it the original sun, if you will, all of a sudden, creation had two components, had two ideas, two creators behind it that had to agree before they could make something real out of their creations. And this went on with the third soul, the first mother, daughter, etc., the great goddess, you might think of the third soul. And as more and more souls became involved in this creative game, the process of creation got more complicated, and they had to have more rules to it, and they had to come up with a way of keeping creation fair without allowing young souls without a lot of experience to dominate creation and do things that other souls with more experience had already thought of. And this is what incarnation is all about, what coming down and becoming human or becoming anything in the physical world is. It's an experiment in creation. It can involve a single soul. It can involve multiple souls. When it involves multiple souls, there is, for a given idea, an oversoul that is the incarnation of that idea. So not all incarnations are in a physical body or controlling a physical body or a physical thing even. Yes, there are oversouls for planets. There are oversouls for galaxies. There are oversouls for entire universes. But there are also oversouls for ideas. And each of these soul vehicles encompasses a different set of capabilities and a different goal for what they're doing. The oversoul of an idea is basically to prove the worth of that idea. So a religion being an idea is successful if it proves to be a useful teaching tool and policing tool sometimes for souls at a certain level of development. And as I think I may have talked about before, at any given time on this lovely planet Earth, species has incarnated souls of all backgrounds, from folks that are getting their first experience driving a human vehicle to those that have had thousands and thousands of incarnations, not only in human form but in other species, even perhaps more advanced, more intelligent species in other universes, in other parts of this universe, etc. I mean, if it can be thought of, it can be. And any idea, if it gains enough credence, will manifest as an experiment in somewhere in the multiverse. Okay, so back to Islam. The one God thing is just fine. It's good to revere the first creator. If it hadn't been for the decision of the first creator to create other souls in their image and give them the ability to learn and grow and exert their spiritual energy in creation, then yes, if we'd had an evil God, he could have been an authoritarian monarch that decided everything that was going to happen, that decreed you're going to do this, and basically all the other souls were like puppets to do their bidding. I think we're all probably pretty glad that's not the way God decided to set up the multiverse. So, this is the crux of the problem with all monotheistic religions, is if you equate God with ultimate power, it's just inconsistent with the reality. Any reality you can give, and it creates an automatic contradiction in faith that eventually everyone, no matter whether they're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever monotheistic religion, is going to be challenged by this duality problem of, if God is all-powerful, then why does he let bad things happen? And then you create the anti-God. The same thing exists with oneness religion. This New Age cosmic oneness is just creating an all-powerful God that is all of us. And this is just silly. It's close to the truth. Each soul has in them the ability to be a creator, and to be a senior creator, and to be as influential a creator as the first creator. That doesn't mean you are God. It means you're made of the same stuff, and you have the same potential, the same capability. Islam believes in prophets. They believe that Noah, Abraham, Moses, Elijah, etc., were all prophets. And where they kind of show a bit of hubris is in saying, well, Muhammad was the last prophet. And that's been a big problem for the Islamic faith, because there have been very, very prophetic, influential people in the Muslim faith that have every right to be called a prophet, not only of God, but of other things, of developments in medicine and science and literature. And by saying that Muhammad is the only and is the main prophet and the last one, this has allowed Islam to persecute many other prophets that have come since, and has inhibited the ability of Islam to grow and change with the times. Now, that's not necessarily all bad, because, like I say, in remaining in Islamic cultures, there's a lot more of a sense of the good things that were part of communities and cultures before things like commercial advertising and the internet hit. So again, I'm just commenting on where I see this religion in the scheme of others. They believe in angels, so they do believe that there are other spiritual beings, so this is a truth, and who do the will of God. Well, again, they're not necessarily doing the will of God. They're doing their own will. And God is a very influential soul, so, the plan or the ideas that God has tend to be ones that get accepted eventually. You can imagine if you were the first soul and you were creating and even thinking about creating, maybe even making mistakes before you decided, oh, this is the way that I'm going to deal with my children, all the other souls that are created as a result of this first creator's actions. So, yes, this is a very experienced spiritual being, and probably has at least twice the experience of any other soul in the multiverse. So, yeah, it's possible that somebody might have a better idea than God, but not likely. And at the same time, God is just another soul. Doesn't have the bandwidth to do everything, to think about everything. Tends to focus on the bigger issues of making sure this large and growing family of souls and all of the physical worlds that they grow and experience in stays healthy, doesn't go off the tracks and spin out of control and end up needing to be destroyed. Because the one power that God retained, the first creator retained the power of veto. This is a very important concept. This is very important to human governments, that if you do have a supreme leader, the only power that they should have is that of a veto. If they have powers beyond that, then you are going to eventually have a despot, somebody who wants to control everything. Not only wants to be able to veto, but wants to be able to dictate. And if a power becomes dictatorial, it becomes oppressive. There's no way around that. And if humans would just learn that lesson, this is another thing that I really like about the Islamic faith, is that they don't tend to make their priesthood hierarchical or domineering. It's a very, very much, at least from what I've seen, the imams, deal with their local communities. They serve different roles in those communities. Some focus on, the spiritual health of the community. Some focus on counseling people with problems, relationship problems or addiction problems, things like that. It tends to be a very service-oriented religion, and you don't see a lot of hierarchy in it, at least not in the healthier countries like Indonesia, Malaysia. The Middle East is a whole nother matter, and I think it's not so much Islam being the problem in the Middle East as politics and the religion being politicized. Let's see, they believe in the sacred books, the Torah, the Psalms, Gospels, the Quran. And again, from an Omnist point of view, there is much good in these books, and all of them were based on the revelations of prophets. They've been rewritten, they've been modified, they've been retranslated, they've been politicized, and so one has to take all of these books with a grain of salt and look at them objectively and comparatively, and also include other books that are not in the monotheistic tradition, like the Vedas, like the writings of the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks, the Sumerians, and all sorts of cultures, all the American cultures. Again, there is nobody that has exclusive access to revelation, to inspiration. And all inspiration ultimately comes from some spiritual entity who has an idea and gives that idea to individuals to inspire them to discover new faith, to discover new science, to make new music, to make new art. It's all basically the same. It's all driven spiritually, and it all contributes to what is a massive effort of creation and a multi-level creation. Again, I think I've mentioned this before, but the multiverse is essentially what I call a grand fractal. If you know anything about fractals, it's basically a fractal is an equation that provides a framework in which patterns develop. And if you look at a larger scale, or if you look at it very close, you will see these patterns repeat and change and have different characteristics depending on where you are in this grand fractal. But it's all based upon patterns, and those patterns are essentially what grows out of the laws that the senior creators have approved. And the laws can change, but only if a pattern that gets seeded somewhere spreads to the rest of the fractal. And if it's a very important change, it will spread to the entire fractal. If it's a minor thing, like an idea that, oh, there should be another solar system here and a planet that has this certain kind of species on it that we want to experiment with, and some ideas that we don't want to infect the rest of the universe, you might create a planet like Earth in an arm of a far arm of a galaxy like the Milky Way, and conduct an experiment. And that's effectively what's going on here at a macro level. So anyway, I don't want to get too far off the topic, but I do want to say that those of you who think that Islam is the bad boy of monotheism, I think should look at it with a less prejudiced eyes and realize that what is unpleasant in Islam is not an outgrowth of the basic faith. It's an outgrowth of politicization of the faith and people trying to exert their own or map their own desires for power, for dominance, whatever, onto a faith that wasn't really designed like that in the first place. One of the areas of Islam that I think people really misunderstand is the relationship between men and women. There may be places in the Islamic world where women are treated like cattle and used and abused and put down by men. That is not true of the whole faith. It's certainly not true of the Muslims that I know here in Indonesia, or the ones I've met in other countries. Malaysia, I've got a lot of friends from Iran, and many friends from other parts of the Middle East, and it is not a tenet of their faith to treat women like shit. It may happen somewheres. This happened in Christian cultures too. This is not part of the faith. It's not because of religion. It is because people want to control and dominate others. And there is nothing patriarchal about religion. If that is part of your belief, you're just plain wrong. And you're wrong in a way that's going to cause you to deal with the world in a very, very dark way. What else might you criticize in Islam? The whole idea of jihad, that's not part of the religion. It may be part of the teachings of some Islamic leaders, but in fact, there was no idea of anything like a religious holy war till after the Christians had basically spent hundreds of years on their holy war. So, I think being a little bit humble about that would behoove people who are harsh to judge or quick to judge the Islamic faith. There are things that I think are a little restrictive and not as accepting and tolerant as others. Like it was interesting getting married in Indonesia because they don't basically recognize marriage between couples of different faiths. So one or the other couple has to agree to marry in the other faith, and they only recognize, at least officially, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism as valid faiths here. So if you don't belong to one of those, you have to decide which one you want to get married as, and you have to, at least on paper, say that you have the same faith. It causes a lot of problems for people who want to marry. Again, this can be a plus or a minus. I think if you marry without thinking about differences in faith, you may ignore a problem that could come back to haunt you later. So I'm not saying this is necessarily bad, but it does make things difficult for people who want to get married. Anyway, let's see. Oh, so in terms of the other piece of their beliefs that I wanted to comment on, they do believe in, like Christians, in a day of judgment and the idea of resurrection, which basically those two concepts are a simplification of karma and reincarnation. It's a partial truth. Yes, every time you die, there is sort of a judgment. You go through a life review, and as I talked about in other segments, there is a different part of heaven that's geared to counseling people of different beliefs. So there's a Christian heaven, there's a Muslim heaven, there's actually multiple ones, because there's a part of heaven where they cater to Christians who think that they've done a wonderful job of their lives. And, that focuses around pointing out the things that they did as so-called good Christians that may not have been quite so good as they thought. The things they did in the name of Christianity. And, there's another part of the Christian heaven that is basically the Christian hell, that deals with people that were raised as Christians, they believe that they are now going to hell. And there's a fair number of Christians who, on their deathbed, are deathly afraid of heaven because they know they haven't done a very good job of their lives, lived a very Christian life. So the same applies for Muslims. There's Muslim heaven, Muslim hell, and I don't think it's a lot different from the Christian versions, or Jewish, for that matter. Other parts of heaven are quite different. The heaven that you get as an atheist is a kind of austere place. You basically die, you think you're dead, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm dead, but I'm still thinking, and I still feel like there's this body I used to inhabit, but I'm not really attached to it anymore. And then, after a little taste of that or something like that, then you get popped into a new incarnation, and, on you go with another life, not remembering that you've had a previous life, and still believing that there's no such thing as reincarnation, and what you see is what you get, and one life is all you get, and all the traditional atheist materialist ways of viewing things. Anyway, getting off on a tangent. All in all, I think there's a lot to be said for the Muslim belief system. I think it's, if anything, to my way of thinking, easier to be an Omnist Muslim than it may be to be an Omnist Christian or an Omnist Jew, because of the basic belief in a system that is beyond our power and beyond our ability to affect. Now, this can be viewed as sort of fatalistic, which is kind of one of the dark sides, I think, of Islam, is to, the inshallah, Allah wills it. There's a sort of a fatalist side to Islam that says, well, it's going to happen anyway, so there's nothing I can do about it, and I should just get on with my life and thank Allah for all the gifts that I get and not worry about anything that I don't get. And that can be discouraging to people. It can allow leadership to basically lord it over people. And give people sort of a fatalistic, I can't do anything about it, so I just make the best of it. And that is kind of a drawback to some extent. It makes Muslim societies maybe more stable, but also allows them to be oppressed by bad leadership, which is, a problem for many religions, actually. But all in all, I think I'm going to enjoy the experience of being an Omnist Muslim for whatever time I am here. And I really am thankful for the odd set of circumstances that led me to be in Indonesia now and to have this experience. I mean, what a perfect way to be able to share what I've learned with everybody in context by getting to experience being inducted into most of the religions that I'm now talking about in my Omnist ministry. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy this segment. You do, like, share, subscribe, usual stuff. Let's see. Do I need donations? Not really, but if you wanted to send a few bucks my way via PayPal or whatever, you want to get involved in any way, drop me a line. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy a segment, and I'll be back next time for another segment of the Omnist Hour. Thank you.